And joining us now, the former House Speaker, the former Republican presidential candidate, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, welcome back to the Situation Room.
It's always good to be back with you.
This is a real battle that's brewing on John McCain and his friends on the one side, Senator Rand Paul and some others on the other side. One congressman from Michigan, Justin Amash, tweeted, Senator McCain called Senator Paul, Senator Ted Cruz, and me wacko birds. Bravo, Senator, you got us. Did you come up with that at hashtag dinner with Barack? So who are you with? The McCains or the Rand Pauls?
Well, I'm really disappointed in John McCain, and I'm very saddened by it. McCain in his younger years was a great maverick. He took on his party all the time. The idea that he's now lecturing the next generation because they have the guts to stand up, which is, I would have thought John McCain would have applauded them. He would have said, I may not agree with you in detail, but I'm proud of the fact that you're standing up for your beliefs, you're fighting. I don't know what's happened to John McCain, but I find this very sad.
But on the substance of the issue, whether or not the Obama administration needed to spell out the use of drones against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil, who's right, McCain?
Ron Paul's right. I mean, if our Constitution means anything, it means that your government can't capriciously kill you without the rule of law. And it was very clear from the Attorney General's earlier letters that they were reserving the right. Remember, we're not talking about a combatant engaged in fighting against the U.S. The minute you do that, you lose all your rights.
But it's okay to kill American citizens in Yemen
who are combatants.
Like Anwar al-Awlaki.
Who's actively...
You don't have a problem with that.
Who is actively advocating the killing of Americans. Look, if you say there's an American walking down the street with a nuclear weapon, which he intends to set off or she intends to set off in the next 12 minutes, you don't have to go to court. The president as commander-in-chief can say, kill them. That is a direct act of combat. But if you say, we have a guy over here who sort of may be plotting, and we may sort of think about he could eventually be serious, because they had stretched this a long way, and they were beginning to kill people who were not directly engaged. I'm a real conservative in the sense that I don't want the government to have the ability to take away your life. And frankly, Senator McCain seemed to think that it was outrageous to suggest this. Does he know nothing of history?
If Anwar al-Awlaki were spotted in New Mexico, I think that's where he was born. What if you couldn't find him, but you heard he was located at a certain location, and that's obviously a very hypothetical scenario.
If he was actively planning the killing of Americans, and you knew that. Now, in Awlaki's case, he was on the internet all the time saying, go kill Americans.
From Yemen.
From Yemen. But he also set himself up. You know, let me give you a specific example. The major who's yelled Allahu Akbar and killed people at Fort Hood.
Yeah.
Had he been killed in the act of that exchange of fire, would have been perfectly legitimate self-defense for the United States. Had somebody known as he walked in he was going to do it, they could have stopped him even with the use of force. Because somebody who walks in with an armed weapon who you have a reason to believe is going to kill people, you're allowed to intervene against. But let's say he'd gone to a meeting and he'd had a conversation and said, you know, someday we should really do something. Well, you arrest him for that and try him. You don't just kill him.
What do you make of the split that appears to be emerging among Republicans on this very sensitive issue?
I think there's a deeper split, which is a split about tone. There are some Republicans who are so used to going to nice restaurants in Georgetown, and they're so used to hanging out with their friends in the establishment, that the tone bothers them. I saw nothing that Rand Paul did that was inappropriate. In fact, it was exactly why the U.S. Senate extends to individual senators the right to talk forever. I'm from the House. We used to get 1 minute.
Right.
But the Senate has a very different tradition of individuals standing up. So I thought Rand Paul was behaving in the best tradition of the U.S. Senate, and I thought for a guy like McCain, who had always been a maverick, who had reveled in opposing his party's establishment, to now be the sort of senior lecturer on behalf of how you should behave. I just thought it was a very sad moment.
What do you think of the president's new charm offensive, inviting a dozen Republican senators to dinner at the Jefferson Hotel, then inviting Paul Ryan the next day for lunch at the White House? He's going to meet with the Republican caucus on the Hill next week. You lived through a presidential charm offensive. When Bill Clinton was president, you were speaker. He was always trying to charm you, and he often succeeded,
yeah,
right?
Look, I think presidents have enormous assets if they want to use them. I'll be more interested if I see Obama actually do something that was rational and moderate. You know, very simple test. reopen the White House tours for children. The president will use up more Secret Service time guarding him while he golfs than it would take to keep the White House tours open all year. This is nonsense. This is punishing the American people. The president, I think, has to decide he actually is serious about entitlement reform, and he's willing to take on the left wing of his party. We have no evidence of any of that. The Charm Offensive, to me, said that their polling showed the same thing that Gallup and others showed, which is he'd been hurt by this phony and fundamentally dishonest campaign about what would happen with the sequester.
Is it going to lead to anything over the next few months between now, let's say the end of July, when the debt ceiling has to be raised once again?
It's up to Barack Obama.
He says he wants a balanced approach. He's willing to deal with entitlement reforms, Medicare, Social Security, but he also wants to deal with tax reforms, not necessarily raising tax rates, but eliminating loopholes, deductions,
if you eliminate
subsidies.
Without cutting rates, you then in effect have a tax increase.
That's what he wants. He wants a tax revenues.
What the Republicans ought to say is, we're for a balanced approach. Part A was the tax increase you already passed.
In order to avoid the fiscal cliff.
Yeah, so now let's take that as the first half of the deal. Now we want the spending half of the deal.
And so it looks like there's not going to be a deal if those are the two positions.
Look, I think in some ways this city is now so mindlessly avoiding creativity that it's sort of mildly astonishing. I think we have no major problem we couldn't solve if we were willing to be flexible and apply common sense.
One final question, and because it's come up and it's generated a lot of buzz. You used to be a Fox News analyst. Roger Ailes, who's the head of Fox News, in this new book that Zev Chafetz has written about him, he quotes him as saying some nasty things about you. Roger Ailes talking about you. You've seen those quotes, I'm sure. What do you think? What do you make of that? Because you worked with him for a long time.
At the time, and by the way, Forbes magazine has come out and said my criticism was right, because I said at the time that in fact I thought they were very unfair in how they covered me during the campaign, which was really great irony to me.
Why do you think that they, from your perspective, they were unfair to you? You were part of their team for a long time.
I have no idea. But that seemed to make him unhappy. So, look, Roger's a big boy. He said lots of things about lots of people in his career. I've been around a long time. I've had lots of different people say things about me.
You haven't spoken to him since those quotes came out?
No, I talked to him a couple weeks ago. We're fine. It's not, we don't have a personality fight.
That's that. You're a big boy, he's a big boy, and we move on. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming in.
Good to be with you.